Well, I know that everyone is wide awake right now. This is the most alert time. Anybody have any intravenous caffeine that you want to share? Share it with your neighbor. How many pastors are here in this session? Good, senior pastors. You know, I've been talking to old people about young people for a long time. And, since I was young, actually, I'm not young anymore. But and one of the things I've heard so many times from senior pastors and denominational leaders and things, as we talk about young people and stats and data and things like this, people will go. Pastors and denominations leaders, they'll say, Brother Ron, do you know how much money we spent last year on our youth? Do you know how many went to youth camp last year? Do you know how much money we spent in our denomination? And they'll tell me about their efforts, but not the results. You know, any real job, like you want to get rewarded for efforts, you get fired. They want results, right? And I think we get a little bit squishy when we talk about measurements and things like that in Christian circles, you know. In fact, we're so used to not giving good measurements, we have a word called evangelistically speaking. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are so used to, untruths and things, we have our own words. So I want to give you just a little glimpse, dive a little bit deeper on some of what we've learned from churches that are really, really remarkable at reaching and discipling the young generation. Now, I gave you some of the overall construct earlier today. And I pray that when we talked about the hearts of the fathers being turned to the young people, that you would begin to see them like Jesus saw the crowds, like helpless, like a sheep without a shepherd. Not just people with piercings and tattoos and they're wild and they're crazy and this kind of thing. And so in our time here together, and I come up right up against where we're going to leave for dinner. So we're going to end right on time. But I want to just, one of the questions I like to ask pastors is, how do you define success? Most pastors, they'll say, well, like, how many are there? How many souls are reached? Stuff like vague things like that. But also finances is a part of it. But like if you're talking about the spiritual side of things, how do you define success? And how would you measure it? Because spiritually, you go, well, it's intangible. How do you measure spiritual growth? How many think that's an interesting question to explore? How many think it's even possible to measure spiritual growth? How many are not sure? How many think it's a trick question? So I want to explore it a little bit because I talked about the pipeline of discipleship, that this transformational process. Well, churches have learned how to start measuring spiritual growth. And one of the things that we learned is from the churches that we study that are really remarkable at reaching and discipling is they're not just starting programs, but they keep measuring the veracity. Is it what we hoped? Are we accomplishing what we thought we would, or did we just start a program? Because we Christians, we're so great at starting programs, and like 40 years later, we still have the same program because we've been doing it all these years. And so I would suggest, in addition to whatever other goals, that maybe one of our goals could be, if our real goal is to make lifelong followers of Jesus, who are disciple makers, that would change our practices. That would change programs. That would change how we spend energy and money and things like this. Rather than just getting people to an altar, getting hands raised. One of the things that we learn from these churches that have gotten very precise on how, once people come forward, what's going on to get them into the church. I'm going to detail some of the precise steps they take. Some of the things that we saw was remarkable, I mentioned this earlier, was that a couple times a year they got an influx. This is the reaching them when they're most likely to come to Christ. We found it remarkable that young people were discipling others. So for example, 14-year-olds are discipling 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds discipling 14-year-olds, all the way up 21-year-olds discipling 20-year-olds. Well, by the time they get out of university, they've been discipling people for 6 years, 7 years. The stat I used earlier today about 70% don't continue in church, is that our goal? Just to keep their foot in the door? That's like the least possible common denominator. What if we set goals like we want them thriving, we want their roots deep, we want them multiplying? Can I have an amen, somebody? Rather than just barely coming to church and acting like we're having a revival. So one of the things we found is that these young people, the norm is radical Christianity. They're meeting with Jesus every day. It's not like, come to youth group. Hey, I'm going to shave my head today. Hey, I'm juggling. Please come. Like begging and begging and begging. This is like, it's like completely opposite of what we've seen in America for so long. If you knew, here's a good question, pastors, that in 10 years, the only people in your church are going to be people that you reach right now as 13-year-olds. How would that change what you do? Because that's what's going to happen in your church and the church. And you know what? There's no one that cares more about the future of your church in 20 years than you, except Jesus. But what I'm saying, there's no staff member, your youth pastor doesn't care more. No one cares more than you do. They care, but not as much as you. And what you do right now will produce that. So one of the things we found remarkable was that the senior citizens weren't put out to pastor. Just because you're focusing on young people doesn't mean you're not ministering to older people. In fact, we heard the last speaker, or one of the speakers this afternoon, everything's blurring together, talk about the Dead Sea. So if everybody's doesn't have an outlet, that's why people die spiritually. We have to redefine what we think on fire is. On fire isn't just sitting on the front row taking lots of notes. We all know people like, where'd John go? I don't know. He was here every service for 3 years. He's gone. Did he go to another church? Did he backslide? We don't know. Maybe he became like the Dead Sea because he didn't have a Timothy, somebody to pour into. So these senior citizens are mentoring with life skills and stuff the younger generation. So we found all kinds of remarkable things on how these churches are equipping their parents to deal with teenagers that are in the middle of this cultural storm that's destructive, like at a level we've never known before. So I was struck by the amount of precision that the churches use. Like, think about a pilot. Every single time they fly, doesn't matter how long they've been a pilot, they have to go through the checklist audibly. They have to say it. And it didn't matter. If you're all alone, you're still supposed to say it out loud. So think about people that do brain surgery, heart surgery. Very precise. And I think about in the church, how much unprecision we have. Well, we have preciseness when it comes to our lighting cues and our video cues. But when you think about getting people, bringing them to Christ, and then walking them down the path of discipleship, it sounded like, well, they got saved, but they didn't come back to church. We had a few people knock on the door, but nothing really happened. These churches have got it down. And they wouldn't say they did, but compared to what we see too often here. So I mentioned earlier this transformational process. So this is the goal. It's not just getting people in a program, getting people in a curriculum, but it's getting people where they are growing and thriving and meeting with Jesus, and then they're discipling others. I mentioned earlier about the whole idea of the cake, that you want the cake, you got to take the ingredients and put them together in the right way. So some of these ingredients, what I'm about to share with you, the preciseness of it, they're putting the ingredients together in the right way. So watch this, step by step. So remember, this is what we're up against. How many think we had to disrupt this trend? How many think we had to turn it around on its head? We can do this. I'm telling you, we can do it. I've seen it in churches again and again. They're reversing this trend, and we can do it as well. So remember these four. So watch this. Each one of these steps, these churches get better and better and better. You don't have to do a million things, just four. It's a new paradigm. And at first, like when you first buy a pair of shoes, you got to break them in. So you're going to have to break this in, right? It won't be instant. You don't just snap your fingers and it happens. It's a different way of thinking about church and the next generation. In fact, Oral Roberts University, where I told you I went to school, the dean found out about this and I asked me to teach a class to all the MDiv students. I'm doing it right now. A required course for all their MDiv students about this new construct of church that we learned from churches around the world. I didn't invent it. I wish I would have invented it. I just noticed it, okay? So, training young leaders, this starts by very first month, a church will go back and go, let's find some young people in our youth group that have a modicum of character. Let's invite them, give them a vision. We're going to reach a lot of young people. We've got a heart for them, and we're going to need a lot of disciple makers. We think you might be one of them. Would you come to an invitation-only meeting? So you invite them only to this meeting, and then that's where you share the vision. And would you be willing to go on a journey over the next 12 weeks to meet with Jesus every day, and then come and let's talk about it, because we want to see you grow in your faith and be qualified to be a disciple maker. So that's training young leaders. So we walk churches through exactly how to do that. Number 2, hosting epic events. Now, we hosted literally hundreds of arena and stadium events around the country over these 25, 30 years, right? So we're teaching churches how to do this. Churches are beginning to do it. And the epic event is not how big it is. It could be 100, could be 300, could be 1,200. You know, we had events with 15, 60, 70,000. It's not the size. The epicness comes by having really an encounter with God. And we're teaching churches how to be really creative in how you communicate. So you grab their attention. Listen, it is not hard to reach people, especially the young generation. You know, influencers are reaching them all the time. You know, and we just got to be better influencers. And so hosting epic events, and I'm going to go back and talk about all the precision in this whole process, okay? Number 3, this deep dive disciple making. I mentioned that earlier, so watch this. Very precise. Once they come to an event, how are you presenting the altar? What is presented at the altar? What happens right after that? Very important, this deep dive disciple making. So you're inviting people to go on a journey for the next 12 weeks, and how they get them in that. I'm going to walk you through the precision steps, and then building this ecosystem so the whole church feels a part of this. This is not, oh wow, isn't it cool? We have a cool youth group guy with a tattoo, and he's really cool for those kids. Isn't that special? No, it's not that. So you got 60, 70, 80-year-olds loving young people, weeping for them, praying for them, because they know, just like when Paul would go into a synagogue, when he would go to a new place, because those guys were the most likely to want to hear about a savior. Monotheistic, they heard there's a Messiah coming. In the same way, if we're going to reach people, the most likely people are those that are young. All the data says. So let's look at some of these. Now, when people are starting to implement Project 13, these are the steps. You don't just flip the switch. There's phase 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Phase 1 is the quiet phase. So you recruit a Project 13 task force, 5 members. We'll give you a video clip on exactly who to recruit, and you're starting to plan. It's like you're planning a D-Day. You're planning to take over the young generation. The enemy has been jacking with them for too long. We're going to take over, right? And you got your task force, you're training your leaders, you're planning your big event. The public phase is, hey, we announced to the world, guess what? We're going to, and we've got this big event coming. Deep impact phases where you're taking them down the steps to a deep dive disciple making, and then there's continuous improvement. This is what the world does all the time in business. Always continuous improvement. We tend to not do that in the church. No, we got a good program. We're fine with it. We invented it 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30, but we don't need, what if we just kept getting better and better and better at what we do? So the first step during the quiet phases, this is actually a D-Day plan. They took them some say up to 3 years to plan D-Day. And because of what happened at D-Day, literally, everybody thought we were all be speaking German. Hitler was taking over everything. He was bombing England. It took them these years, and it was very precise. First the paratroopers are going in, and then the bombers are going, and then the ships landed. And within the first 24 hours, 150,000 troops landed. Next 1 month, 850,000 troops landed. Within a year, war was over. See what they did? They got all these nations together and got everybody synchronized. They got smart about it. Let's take everybody on our side. Let's take all of our resources and figure out. So they put all the very sophisticated plan together without Hitler knowing anything that was going on. So must we? If we want to take over we just need to be smart about it. The enemy's coming at our kids with all this stuff. Let's be smart about how we go after them. So here's some of the precise steps. Let me walk through this. So in an epic event, we would look at all of our events. A young person coming in is like an onion. And every little thing was very precise on how to peel back one layer and then another layer and then another layer. So that by the time the altar call came, we got to their heart. You know, they got all this noise in their brain. So when they walk up and they're outside the building and they hear music playing, and there's some, you know, big banners like, oh, this is gonna be fun. Layer comes off. They walk inside, somebody gives them something. Oh, here's a blah, blah, blah. Another layer comes up. They walk into the building, they see a countdown and music, and they go, oh, this is gonna be more fun than what I thought. Another layer comes off. Step by step, peeling the layer of the onion until we get to their heart. So it's not just because you call it epic doesn't mean it's epic. You're really thinking deeply. So when the guy comes out to do, hey, welcome everybody, he doesn't use a bunch of Christianese jargon. He just, hey, everybody's glad to be here. Everybody shouts, and the kid goes, oh, it's gonna be fun. Layer comes off. The band comes up, instead of doing a Christian worship tune that no one that's not saved wouldn't even know, maybe they start just doing a funky groove and everybody's clapping. Guys, put your hands together. Sends a message. Oh, this is interactive. It's not just from the stage. Are you seeing what I'm saying? Very, very smartly thinking about every step along the way. So everything that happens is all very intentional. So the worship and so forth. So let me just talk about that when you go to deal, when you're dealing with a young generation, instead of just saying, this is the gospel, do you want to go to heaven or not? Deal with a felt need, something that they're really dealing with, and show them how the Bible can help them. It's not, Christianity is not just about what happens after we die. It's about how to live here on this planet. And if we present something, where would you go when you die tonight? Well, I'm really hurting right now. Do you have anything for me? If not, maybe I'll go talk to the drug guy, you know? And whatever felt need you deal with, it always leads back to Jesus, surrendering your life, right, to him, because we know he's the only solution, of course. So we saw so many stadiums and arenas like this filled, but it's really important. I started thinking, when people come forward, when young people come forward, what do they think they're doing when they come down? You know, it's really easy to manipulate people. Play the music, soft music, that story, people crying, come down right now. And that just bugs the snot out of me, because events for young people have gotten kind of the reputation of being emotionalism. That makes me mad. It doesn't have to be that way. So we got to the place where we stopped. We were all heads up, all eyes open, no music, everyone looking around. Tonight, if you want to become a follower of Jesus, this is not an emotional decision. It's a smart decision. It's the best decision you'll ever make. It may affect your emotions, because when you surrender your heart, it's connected to the rest of you. You see what I'm saying? So anyways, we have all kinds of tools that we've kind of been helping churches to know. How do you make it epic? What about the branding? What about all that kind of stuff? But what's most important is, we got planning tools. What time of the year do you do these things? I don't have time to go through all of this right now. I want to get to some of the preciseness. A lot of churches, they would do more stuff for young people if they knew how to plan. So that's why we walk them through a whole planning process with all these questionnaires and how to market and how to brand and all this kind of stuff. So my big question here is, how do we, when they come down, let me tell you, I want to get to this is too long, I can't go to all these slides, but how do we get them in the pipeline of growth? This is what I want to get to. So these precise steps, and if I had time, I could take 5 minutes on each one of these, but very smartly, very disciplined, these churches, each step of the way. Number one, instead of just thinking our goal is to have a room full of people at our event for young people, it's having a room full of the right people. The right people is the right age. 83% come to Christ between the ages of 4 and 14. That's International Bible Society. Hard to get to them before they're 12, unless you have Vacation Bible School. But 13 is that sweet spot. 13, that's what we call it, Project 13. The kid is going, who will accept me in their group? They want belonging. Is it the cool kids? Is it the druggies? Is it the jocks? And then usually the churches run right by them. The churches that we studied are going after them. So, but it's not just, it's the right age, but it's also those
that have been incubated relationally. Watch, this is so smart. You know, we do events. We all have done events, right? Outreach, this and that. Bring your friends, bring your friends, bring your friends. And people like get bugged to death, so they finally come. And they come out of transaction rather than relationship. And, you know, stop bugging me, I'll come. And so this is what happens. It's very difficult to get them to come back if they come out of transaction. So these churches have taught their young people, now we're helping churches learn how to do this, incubate relationships. Like, for example, train your young people to see the kid that's sitting alone at lunchtime that everybody's making fun of. Go sit with them. Just broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend. Parents just got divorced. Whatever's going on. Go sit with them. Making an intentional friend. You're not even trying to get them saved yet. Just be a decent human being to them. Just be kind to them. Hey, what do you like to do? Play football? Oh, I got friends that like to play football. A couple friends from youth group. Go throw the football around a few times. After several weeks, an event comes. You've planned. Hey, this event's coming. Would you like to come? Well, that kid, you already know a couple kids from the youth group. Sure, I'll go. Comes out of a relationship. Are you seeing what I'm saying? One of the most important things is relational. Kid goes forward at the event. The person that brought him comes forward with him. They've got relationships there. It's not just a group full of strangers. I'm going to walk you through some of these steps. So number 2 there is, watch this. Youth pastor, right in the middle of one of their epic events. He's right mid-altar call. And I've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to tell you this and then we're going to close. Mid-altar call, he stops and he goes, now in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to become a follower of Jesus. And you know, there are some people sitting here that have been following Jesus every day, meeting with him, preparing for you because they want to help you follow Jesus. In fact, if you're one of the young leaders for the last 12 weeks you've been meeting with Jesus, would you guys stand up right now? So they all stand up. They all have the same shirts on. Hey, why don't you guys come up here right now? Watch this. They come up on stage. They're standing behind him. You're sending a message to the kids. Now these guys, if you decide to become a follower, they're going to help you follow him because it's about not just tonight, but following him every day. You see all this subtle messages you're sending? The kids are going, they're just like me, just a year or two older. If they can do it, I can do it. So then he goes back into the altar call. So tonight, if you're thinking about it, you want it to come forward right now. So they come forward. These guys come off the stage, start praying for him. Then they go out to the breakout room. They're all in groups immediately. Hey, what's your name? They're very relationally connected. And so it's really important. You're asking them to become a follower of Jesus. Words are important. Using the word follow or follower, Jesus said it 32 times. Follow me. I'll take you. I'll make you fishers of men. Take up your cross and follow me. Jesus never asked anybody to accept him. One time it said, receive the Lord in John, but that word receive means grab a hold of like a bulldog. It doesn't mean like a passive word like we think. The word follow is a good word because you get people taking action, not becoming a passive pew sitter. So they're connected in small groups. Watch what happens. This is so cool when I've seen this happen again and again. So they're done. Data entry. People stay up late night deciding which new followers are connected with which young leaders. Young leader wakes up in the morning. He gets a text with all the names of the people in his small group and their contact information. And then he or she is trained the first 12 hours, first 72 hours, first week, first second week, exactly how many contacts to make, how many conversations. Within the first week, they're having a Coke or a coffee with them. Are you feeling me here? It's all relational. They're making sure they have a ride the next week. This is not rocket science. We can do this, you guys. Think about them. They're a refugee in a new country. What happens when the refugee first lands? Whoever first connects with them, that's who they bond with. So then that next week they come back, hey, we're going to have burgers, this and that. And that's where they're introduced, hey, the next 12 weeks, we want to invite you to be on this journey. They keep following Jesus closer day in and day out. So anyways, I was struck by how much preciseness was used in all these churches that we studied and how they continually walk people down this path. So churches that start, they use these 2 books. They start training their young leaders and get them in the pathway. And let me just close with this. The way that we found churches to be most successful with a new paradigm is not just, here's a book. It's not books. Project 13 is not a series of books. That's some of the ingredients. But it's but it's the process. It's the transformational process. And so we have the, I think I have one on me, all the training on this flash drive. And it's like something for each month for the next 12 months for you and your Project 13 task force to do. And, but we found that churches that get this, they would buy this, spend a lot of money on this. They were hardly opening it up. Like they actually felt like they were doing their job because they got it. And so we decided we're not going to sell it anymore. I'm trying to get to the end here because I want to show you what we're going to do. We're not going to. I'm sorry, I'm going through this all. I didn't have time to edit this down. So these are some of the churches we learned from. But what we're doing is churches that are most successful, they get coached along the way. How to take this and make this this transformational process a reality. So here we go. Everybody get your phones out. This is what's next. If you want it, if you're interested, if you join the coaching, I'll come right alongside your team and I'll help them implement this very stuff that we've been talking about. The top 10, all the things you need to do, how you put a task force together, and how you launch this in your church. I'll coach them and I'll help them. I'll take the weight off your shoulders and I'll help them become successful in this. The master class, there's 40 videos on here. There's all kinds of PDFs. You can see all the stuff and it costs literally over $100,000 to put this together, but you can't buy it for that. I won't let you pay that much for it. In fact, I won't let you pay anything for it because we know coaching is so important. You've heard coaching mentioned a lot. If you will engage in the coaching program, we will give it to you. We will give this to you today. Or tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow morning as well. So these are all the parts of the master class and everything that you get on the disc. So if you would do it, that's the thing to scan right there. If you're interested in the coaching thing, we'll come alongside you. Your task force, your Project 13 task force will have something training each month and coaching each month. You can do it as a group. You can do it just me and your church. If I have time, we can do it that way. Here's the link to do that. And so let me pray for you. Father, help us. We know young people are broken. We know they're hurting. We know they need help. Lord, the answer is sitting right here, like at the other end of our voice, at the other end of our action, what we can do to make a difference. Lord, I pray for the pastors and the other leaders in this room. Help us be those that break out of the old mold, try the new model, and bring you great glory because we refuse to leave this planet until the gospel is firmly in the hands of the next generation. God bless you guys. Thank you.